Hello everyone and welcome back. Hi, my name is Kristy and I am located in Massachusetts Zone 6A with an average last frost date of May 15th. This year, however, it has been moved up to May 10th. So I'm giving myself about a week difference for some of my seed starting this spring. But today we're going to go ahead and seed start some salvia, or other known as sage. I do have perennial salvia and annual salvia. And we are gonna go ahead and start a lot. I'm going to try and do a whole 40 cell tray of just my perennial. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my 6 cell trays for my annuals. I really wanna go ahead and save these more for drying. I do wanna go ahead and have some nice dry bouquets to go with some things like my gomphrena and straw flower. So that way I can go ahead and enjoy some gorgeous blooms all year round. Today, we're gonna go ahead and seed start a bunch of different varieties of salvia. I have 2 that are perennials, and it says they're perennial in zones 4 through 8. So that will be perfect for me being in zone 6A. And then I have several of them that are annuals. Most are from Baker Creek. And then I also have one from seed swapping and one that I got just at Home Depot while I was around shopping. Of course, I feel like anytime you go to Home Depot or Walmart, I even see them in the grocery stores, I end up just going ahead and picking up some kind of a seed packet, even though I know I don't really need it. The reason why I am going ahead and seed starting so many is I really want to go ahead and establish some good perennials. I really want to go ahead and just have a good perennial wall so I don't have to seed start so many flowers next year, and I can go ahead and just really honestly just focus on cut flowers. But this year we're gonna go really heavy on perennials. And then I also have some that are annuals because I really wanna go ahead and dry them. I really love my gomphrena and I wanna add some other varieties of flowers that I can go ahead and dry, such as salvia and straw flower, so then I can go ahead and enjoy gorgeous blooms all year round. So I have 2 from Baker Creek that are going to be perennials. It says this one right here is zone 3 to 9, and this one right here is zone 4 to 8. This one gets 18 to 24 inches tall, while this one right here gets 20 to 27. So I have 2 different from Baker Creek that are perennials. I'm going to be adding them to 2 different areas. And then the ones that I have for annuals, I have some pink Sunday salvia I got from seed swapping. I have one from Fairy Morris, so I got this I believe at Home Depot or Walmart. And then I have 3 others that I have from Baker Creek that I'm gonna go ahead and use. These ones are annuals. This one does say it's a perennial in zones 9 to 11. And I don't believe these ones say anything about being perennial. So I have a handful of different varieties. The annuals I'm going to do in just some 6 cell trays. I read on some of the back of the seed packets, it says it's better to go ahead and sow them in clumps. So I plan on doing that. And then my perennials, I will space out and try and do about 20 or so for every variety. Now, while we go ahead and get our seed starting trays set up, I did read that you want to go ahead and press the seeds about 1/16 of an inch. So my game plan is to go ahead, sow everything on top, then lightly press them in and then cover them with a good layer of vermiculite. Sometimes I'm not so heavy on the vermiculite. It does say that it also needs light to germinate. So you definitely don't want to go ahead and cover it with too much soil. Mainly, I feel like you just want to go ahead and press it in so it has good contact with the soil. It does say from anywhere from 10 to 30 days, depending on the different varieties. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and separate all my annuals in their own cell packs, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put all the perennials together. So hopefully they'll germinate around the same time. And for the salvia, it says that it can take sun to part shade, which is good. A lot of the area that I have my pollinator garden in, it gets afternoon shade because we have really tall pine trees here. So I'm hoping that if it gets a lot of morning suns from like basically sunrise, probably until about 2 p.m., that everything should be good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're new here, we're gonna go ahead and talk about getting our seed starting mix ready to go. So I like to go ahead and pre-moisten it. I will go ahead and add a bunch of water to it. And then once you go ahead and mix it in, if you can squish it in your hand and no water droplets come out, but it does hold its form, then it's ready to go. If you go ahead and squeeze it and it does have water droplets coming out, or just go ahead and add some more dry seed starting mix. I like to use seed starting mix because it's just so nice, light and airy, but you do not have to. You can go ahead and use potting soil too if you would like. So what I like to do is I have my 40 cell. I'm gonna start with my perennials. You don't have to start this many. I do really enjoy these clear ones. That way I can see the roots. Like, it's really cool to see my peppers and my tomato plants. That way I know if they're starting to get a little bit root bound or stressed, I know I can go ahead and pot them up. And actually sometimes these ones are actually cheaper than just like the black ones that you can buy. Totally optional. I got those actually off of Amazon. So I will go ahead here and I'm just going to go ahead and start dumping it in, sifting it. And even like sometimes, as you see, you can still find some chunks in there. I just go ahead and pull them out because you just don't want your roots to have to go ahead and compete with anything. You want them to just be able to develop without any obstruction. So I just like to go ahead and fill everything in, and then I will go ahead a few times and compress the soil in. Now, you don't want it so jam-packed that the roots, you know, are having a hard time developing. So I just lightly just go ahead and push it in. And then I will just go ahead and add some more soil to it. And I usually end up doing this about 2 or 3 times. Do you need light to germinate? I like to go ahead and just make sure that the soil level is at the top. If you do need to go ahead and say cover with 1/4 of an inch, I will leave some room and then I will go ahead and add more soil on top. So I'm just gonna go ahead again, press in all of the, I found another little chunk right there. I usually have a cup that I can just go ahead and put all those in. And as you can see, there are still air pockets. So again, we wanna get all the air pockets out. You don't want those in there because then once you start bottom watering, they can go ahead and cave in. And we don't want to lose any seedlings. And I have found that sometimes too, especially with my perennials, and if I just put a bunch of clumps, like a clump of seeds all in at once, some will just randomly start germinating later on. All right, then I go ahead and get all that extra dusted off. I don't know. I feel like I check, recheck, and check some more, but I feel like that is just the teacher in me, is just making sure you have all of your ducks in a row and you're not, you know, missing anything. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in my bottom tray, which I will use for bottom watering. So as you can see, everything is just nice and even. And I am going to start with my perennials. So we'll start with the Swan Lake. And I'm going to go ahead and do 4 rows of 5 for this one. And the seeds are pretty small, but I think I'll be able to go ahead and use it without having to use a toothpick. But I do have a toothpick near me just in case. And with the Baker Creek ones, you do get a good amount. But sometimes I find they do get stuck on the bottom. All right, so actually, I don't even know if I'll have enough to do 20. So if that's the case, I'll just go ahead and save one for maybe my seed swapping. All right, so I guess we'll probably do 2. And what I like to do is I put either 2 in the middle, or if they're larger seeds, I will put 2 on opposite ends. So first we're gonna go ahead and start with our Swan Lake. This is one of the perennials. I was gonna go ahead and do little clumps in about half, so 20 and 20 cells, but it seems like I probably could just go ahead and do maybe 2 in each, and then I'll just go ahead and put some of my annuals in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just put 2 kind of in the middle, and then I'm just gonna lightly press it in with my fingers afterwards. And luckily these are actually kind of big enough so that way we can go ahead and pick them up and I won't need a toothpick. And that way if more than 3 goes ahead and pops in, that's all right. So I might have enough to go ahead and do 2 rows. So I guess I'll be doing some annuals. So I'll probably do that. I'll probably just keep going. And then once I run out of 2, I'll just go ahead and put my next plant tag. Today is March 8th. So we are starting a lot of seeds this weekend. I have Salvia, I have Gumfrina, which I actually am super excited. I have so many different varieties of that. So we'll be starting a lot of Gumfrina. but I am just so excited to finally be in the, big rush of seed starting, more of my flowers than my vegetables. I have all of my vegetables pretty much done right now, except for like when I go ahead and get cucumbers and squash done. All right, so I was able to do 3 rows. So I'm gonna make sure now that I get my next set, which is the rows, and I get my plant marker in. So that way we don't lose track of anything. All right, I'm gonna do the same exact thing for this one. I'm gonna put 2 or 3 seeds in, and then I will move on to the next one, always making sure I do push them in. Again, they do need light to germinate. And this is the first time that I'm growing this. Last year, I basically just grew snapdragons, which did pretty good, except I did have a bunny that ate a lot of my snapdragons, unfortunately, last year. I'm pretty sure it lives under my deck, so I need to get some fencing up, and then maybe it will find a new home. And then I did grow a lot of zinnias, which I had some success with, and sunflowers. And sunflowers and nasturtiums, I actually did just direct sowing. So I didn't start too many flowers indoors. It was mostly just vegetables my first time around. So I'm very excited to go ahead and get some seed starting underway for flowers. I really want to get into cut flowers at some point. I'm trying to get a little farm stand on the side of my driveway, but gotta go and make sure I get all the right stuff ready for that first. All right, so we're gonna do 2 more. And then I have a few extra, so maybe I'll just go ahead and lightly press it in a few other random cells. All right, so we have 2 more left. So I think what I'm gonna do is do the Fairy Morris one, this beautiful blue. And I always like to keep the seed packets too, because what's gonna happen is everything's gonna germinate. You're gonna get ready to go ahead and sow them outside, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be like, oh wait, how tall does everything get? So I like to go ahead and keep my seed packets just as a reference for later on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and speed things up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get my 6 cell trays also as well. We'll just go ahead and let those just go ahead and fast forward through, and I'll see you afterwards. So once you go ahead and have everything in your little cell trays, I went ahead and again, gently pressed down on everything because it says it does need about a good 1/16 of an inch, which is fairly small. So I just made sure they had great contact with the soil. I'm gonna go ahead and top everything off with a good layer of vermiculite. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just take my spray bottle and mist them in. Get the humidity dome on, throw it on your heat mat with a good 75-degree temperature, and honestly, you're good to go from there. Again, I do like to go ahead and take my spray bottle and mist it, usually in the morning or at night. I always want to make sure that everything looks nice and moist and it doesn't dry out, because you want your seedlings to go ahead and have the best chance of germinating. So let's go ahead and get our vermiculite on. Again, I'm going to give it a really nice layer, kind of acting like it is going to be in the soil. Some of them are larger than others, the seeds. So those smaller ones, I don't want to cover them too much. But I feel like my light setup is fairly good. And if you haven't seen, go ahead and check out my basil. I'll go ahead and link it in the description. It said it could go ahead and germinate anywhere from 7 to 14 days. I had germination, I kid you not, in 2 days, and most of them were actually germinating by day 3. So I'm like, here I am starting my basil maybe a week or so early, and it germinated so fast, which is fine. So we're gonna go ahead and keep adding a nice layer of vermiculite and then spraying everything in afterwards. Again, I hope after doing this time after time, if you haven't seen any of my other videos, I'm trying to do anything I can with perennials. I did some tomatoes and peppers, and we're just kind of mimicking the same process over and over again. I do have a lot of potting up to do soon, so I'll go ahead and do that. and then show you also how I bottom water and see when things need to be watered. So this is all set. I'm gonna go ahead and spray everything in, and then we're gonna go ahead and get on the heat mat. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and get the humidity dome on. When I do have these smaller 6 cells, I just go ahead and use an extra bottom tray that I have. And then these fit perfectly on it. It does have some holes that you can use for ventilation. I always make sure that the holes do not line up. That way you can keep all the moisture in. And then I guess sometimes usually if there's like a really warm day, this room gets very hot very quick. I will go ahead and just let some of that humidity out if it just seems like they're too wet inside. But other than that, I have my humidity domes on, and then we're gonna go ahead and put them on the heat mat. And there you have it. We have so much salvia ready to go. I cannot wait to go ahead and get these out in the garden. Again, I did 2 different types of perennial, and then I had several different types of annual. They do say that they reseed. Some of them do say tender perennial. So my goal is in the fall to go ahead and let everything dry, harvest some so I can go ahead and have them as bouquets in my household. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take some and make sure that I go ahead and save some seeds. So that's kind of why I'm starting a lot, because next year I hope that I don't have to buy so many seeds, and then I can go ahead and just save them. And also make sure you go ahead and put those plant tags right next to the flowers when you're going ahead and planting them out. You can't do every single one, but even just several of them, or 1 or 2 even, just so you know what you are saving when the time comes. So again, thank you so much for joining me. If you found this helpful at all, please go ahead and click like and subscribe and hit that bell button. We're going to be having a lot of updates soon, so I want to make sure that you're able to see how everything is doing, whether it's germinating, potting up, or bottom watering. I do need to go ahead and do some more vlog style, so that way you can go ahead and see some more of behind the scenes, every day-to-day things. So I'm going to get on that too, but again, I am a full-time mom. I work 40 hours a week teaching preschool, so I only do all my seed starting on the weekends while it is nap time. So welcome to another nap time session of seed starting. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and get some of my Gomphrena going. I have some Coreopsis I'm pretty sure I have to do this week. And I have a couple of other flowers. So lots of flowers this weekend, and I can't wait. So again, thank you so much for joining, and see you next time. Bye.